Peace and welcome. Welcome back to a new week. We are now collectively in the Five of Spades week this week. Five of Spades solar value is 44, and this is the 44th week of the year. So it started yesterday, October 27th, and goes until Sunday, November 2nd. So we're in that transition from one month to another. Change, right? That is what the fives represent, that change, that shift, that transition, being able to adapt, being able to pivot. But since this is the five of all five, since it's under that spade, this can bring a lot of upheaval, a lot of having to be able to pivot, adapt, adjust, even sometimes in disruption and transformation. But it is really here to kind of allow growth and to have more. This is an energy of seeking and wandering and freedom and travel and just, again, that pivot, that being able to adjust and move accordingly. Now, we can kind of see this Five of Spades energy already playing out. There's a massive hurricane hitting the islands, and all the prayers and love sending out to them and praying that they come back even stronger and make it through that very intense storm. Five of Spades, a storm of some sort. There were earthquakes yesterday, and the Five of Spades is and can be the card of earthquakes because it does bring a sudden shift and change and maybe even a separation when we look at those nines that it has. So weather-wise, we're already seeing the energy align with this week, and it's only Tuesday. So again, no fear. It's just knowing the energy, how to move with it, how to allow it, how to adjust to it, and again, kind of go with it rather than resist it. Now, let's look at the Five of Spades on the plate. I already zoomed in, so hopefully you can see this really good, and you can see where the five is sitting, and we're going to go through all the cards that the Five of Spades has and what we can kind of expect for this week. So the Five of Spades is sitting right here, and this is the Venus line. So it sits Venus and it sits Mars. Well, that in itself, right? A lot of passion with relationships. You know, you have Venus with the love and even aesthetics and resources, value, second house, right? And then you have Mars, very, Aries energy, impulsive action, our warrior, our drive, our, that kind of the guts to get things going and started. So that Five of Spades has a lot of energy attached to it just from where it sits on the plate, right? So there could be even a shift in relationships, how we view relationships, what we want relationships. But because it's also a spade, there could be changes in our work, our location, our health. This would be a great week to maybe even, change up your routine, right? Do something different because that is the purpose of this energy, to get you out of any complacency to allow growth, right? Because when we look at it, and let's look in the box, the Five of Spades supporting card is the Four of Diamonds. So it is kind of coming from a more sturdy, stable, sometimes complacent, stuck energy with the Four of Diamonds. But this also comes from like knowing what you want, getting clear about what's important to you, and kind of ticking off on that journey to kind of build that, right? Now, with the Ten of Hearts being here, there is this, like, their purpose is to kind of expand because that is what tens bring, that expansion, that increase. This also makes them, family orientated or really learning how to create, big love, being surrounded by love. They can definitely gain a lot of attention. The Five of Spades kind of brings with it that energy. They can be very passionate. They do have a lot of love to give, but they have to be really receptive to this like big open energy that the 10 are. There's expansion here, right? There's growth here, and that is kind of their path. So their Mercury card for life is the Jack of Hearts. And this is why or where some of their like very fixed opinions can come from, how they see things, how they even hear things, speak on things. It can be one-sided at times, but this also gives them they speak with a lot of passion. They really enjoy being of service, right? And a lot of times that intense energy that they come with is really just a lot of love they have and drive that they have to kind of get their message out, right? With that Jack of Hearts in in Mercury. And because it is a one-eyed jack, there is sometimes tendency to be blindsided, only see things from one perspective, theirs, and not be open to others, right? But as they grow, they start to realize that it's okay to kind of, expand and see things from different perspectives. But this does also give them that very loving nature. Again, they love to serve. They can kind of wear that cape of like, let me come in and save and rescue, be the hero. With the Jack of Hearts, also there can be they're drawn to sometimes like younger people. Like you find a lot of Five of Spades, like sometimes coaching others, helping others, being of service, and usually maybe like youth sports or, anything that kind of helps the collective, like raise that bar, because that's a big part of the Jacks. It's an initiation, right? So there is a lot of love that they have. They share it in a very fierce way with that Jack of Hearts. Now, their Venus card is the Nine of Clubs. So when there's a nine in Venus, there's a lot of emphasis on one, having boundaries, knowing when to say no, because sometimes with the nines on like the low side, they can overgive, overshare, overcompensate. So it's really important to know when to when to like have those boundaries, so when to say no. Now, I also feel like with that Nine of Clubs in Venus, when it comes to relationships, they need substance. They're spades, so they go deep anyway. So even in relationships, they need that intellectual connection. They need some kind of like something going on in the mind. Teach them something, give them something to think about, because that Nine of Clubs is like a big mind. It's thinking all the time, and them having that in Venus when it comes to their relationships, being open, being giving, and again, kind of having to master the balance of whether they overgive, overshare, overdo, trying to save. Now, also like in relationships, knowing and trusting that when, if a relationship is ending, it's fulfilled its purpose, it's fulfilled its time in their life, and to let go gracefully, not look at it as the ending as being punished, but really like being protected, that something better is coming. Because what do we know about nines? They're like cycles of things coming, cycles of things going, and either way, you're allowing, you're not attached, you're not holding on to something that's trying to go. So they learn a lot through their relationships, because their Venus is a nine and their Mars is a nine. So it is very much about not being attached and just allowing and really giving from that space, but at the same time, be careful of like the overdoing it, right? Now, with the Nine of Spades, and what's interesting, both of these nines, the supporting card is that six. So a lot of this is like lessons. A lot of this is to bring more maturity, because when you have to learn how to say no and you have boundaries, that brings a lot of maturity and growth through those experiences, through relationships. And then the Nine of Spades being their Mars card, this on the low side can make them extremely intense, argumentative, aggressive, hot-headed, and disruptive in that space. But as they mature and as they grow and they realize the power that they have, because when they do show up, that means things are about to change. It's time to grow, it's time to let go, and it's time to do it with grace and not resistance. And so now this also makes them like really health conscious, like working out, moving a lot of that energy, because it's a five and it needs an outlet. So this Nine of Spades, it would really be good this week if you got into the gym, kind of like punch out the frustrations or whatever you do, push-ups, whatever it may be. This is a great card to kind of move that energy, so you can let go of any kind of like frustrations, disappointments, arguments, hostile feelings, whatever. But this also, with these two cards, make them great like spiritual teachers when they really do kind of grow into their power. They can be very wise. They come from a very wise space with that spade energy, that old soul. And so they can bring a lot of information. And again, a lot of that intensity is just this passion to kind of like serve. So I think they can be sometimes misconstrued in a lot of like, aggressive, intense energy. And don't get me wrong, there's highs and lows to all of this. But on the high side, they're really just trying to serve, right? And sometimes they have to, kind of be mindful of the intensity when it comes to that Nine of Spades being in Mars. And again, having to let go, knowing that endings are blessings, because it just means something better is coming and they're not attached. They're just flowing with it. Now, Jupiter is the Two of Hearts for them. So it just shows like relationships are a big part of their life. The twos are in like the reward locations in your spread, right? The two of hearts is Jupiter, and they have a two of diamonds as their cosmic reward. So it just shows that partnerships really can enhance what they're doing, can really be a blessing for them. But sometimes with these twos, like the low side would be that codependency, control, fears of being alone, not really being open. But at the same time, like I do really feel like their lover energy, they love that connection, they love love, they love to be in partnership. But again, they don't want to be like restricted or boxed in or held. So you kind of have to have that as their partner. I feel like you have to kind of have that autonomy and that space, so like give them space, knowing that they need that space. And as long as you give them that space to have that freedom, they'll always like come back with that two energy, because they do. That's a lover's card, and it's in Jupiter. And we know Jupiter is big, blessed energy. And so again, they can look at relationships as such a blessing to them. And so in this week, a lot about relationships can show up. Now, their Saturn card is the King of Hearts. And when there's a king in Saturn, a lot of this is about maturity, growing, stepping into that power, and really like standing in that big heart energy. The King of Hearts is like big love, big Rico Suave, big you know what energy. And so when they lead with that big heart, and they trust what they feel, and they mature emotionally and have a lot of emotional intelligence, they can be, you're a good protector, a good leader, very confident energy. Sometimes this can get, a lot of times when you see these kings, there can be some cockiness to this, but it really is about confidence, right? And just standing on those 10 toes and knowing their abilities and that strength that this big heart has. But it's in Saturn, so there also can be like resistance to authority or bucking authority. I feel like the Five of Spades and a few of these other cards up in here in this Venus row kind of like challenge authority, or like F your rules, they're meant to be broken, or like walk to the beat of their own path. And when others may try to kind of like come in and boss around or tell what to do, there can be some resistance with these kings, right? Especially having one in Saturn, there can be resistance to like people in power, people in charge, like kind of feeling like you can't tell me what to do. But a big part of this is that emotional growth, emotional maturity, and really leading with that big heart, that King of Hearts, very protective of the people that they love. Now, their Uranus card is the King of Diamonds. And if you remember, their Mercury was the Jack of Hearts, a one-eyed Jack. And now they have this King of Diamonds, the one-eyed King. So there again can be some, blindsidedness, only seeing things from one perspective, their own, and not really being open to others. Now, this King of Diamonds also like big boss energy, big leader energy, big confident energy, especially in business, money, like really like taking the financial bull by the horns and like really bossing up. And that's a big part of that energy, that maturity, that growth, and really following that power that king kind of asks of us, right? And it does require, a lot of like seeing yourself as that boss, as that leader. And so with these two kings this week, it's like, where in your life can you kind of implement that power and implement that maturity that comes with those kings? Like, it's really important. And because it's in Uranus, they can have like, multiple business opportunities, really make better, really good business decisions, because they're coming from that space of like mastery. Now, their Neptune card is the Six of Hearts. And again, so like the relationship wise, with a 9 in Venus and a 6 in Neptune, realizing you get back what you put out with that 6. There is this card of like wanting to keep the peace, things balanced, but also like trusting their intuition. And sometimes with 6s, there can be a little complacent energy, but with it being in Neptune, it can be very intuitive, very family orientated. But that 6 of Hearts naturally sits Mars. So there is this like, if things are unfair, if things are unjust, they can get really heated and want things to kind of be balanced. So they do have this really strong passion of creating peace, probably within their closest, connections and what it is that they're working on, etc. So, and there could be even past life relationship stuff, or just relationship lessons that they're learning in this lifetime as well. And then their Pluto card is the Four of Clubs. So there is this like needing to have order, needing to have discipline, needing to have structure, needing to have focus, because again, 5s can be a little chaotic, kind of like squirrel, really easily distracted. You got this going on and this going on, and you're trying to juggle everything. So their biggest challenge at their biggest transformation is to kind of focus in, build something solid, get clear about what it is that they want, create more mental peace within themselves. But it's going to come through like, because again, fives can kind of like go from step 2 to step 6 and then back to step 3 and back to over here. But that 4 is like building a house. And you have to start from the bottom. You need a secure foundation, and then you can build up one step at a time. So the more that they kind of do things in an orderly way, it can bring more satisfaction, more contentment, and more peace. And whenever there's a 4 in Pluto, and it's interesting because there's a few 5s that have a 4 in Pluto, I think with that energy is like when things get just complacent or too comfortable, that sometimes can trigger this need to go, this need to ghost, this need to disappear, because it can be unfamiliar to have peace. It can be unfamiliar to be content for that 5. And when things or if it's boring, they may be like, let's spice some things up here. So anyways, with that 4 of clubs and Pluto, it is about order, getting clear, and also really being able to, again, teach and bring forth knowledge, but trusting that they know what it is that they're bringing forth, and like really having a lot of security in the knowledge and information. And then the result card to that is the 2 of diamonds. So with the 2 of diamonds being a result, and that that 2 of hearts being their Jupiter card, their blessings again come from those partnerships, cooperating, listening, coming together for, obviously relationships of value, but really learning that give and take, that receptivity, that sharing. And I think with the 5 of spades, having these 2s in blessed places, it shows that their partnerships can really bring a lot of blessings to their life. And they may feel very connected to the people that they love, or the people that they feel that have value or can add value, and they can add value too. So again, partnerships are a big thing for this energy. So this week you may find a lot of shifts and change in how you view partnerships, how you show up in partnerships, etc. Now, their cosmic lesson in life is the Jack of Spades. So there is this like constant initiation that they're going through. And we know with the Jacks, they can kind of teeter, right? They can I always say, this 5 of Spades has those 2 Jacks, 2, 1. Actually, when you think about it, they have all 3 of the one-eyed energies, the one-eyed Jack, the one-eyed King, and the other one-eyed Jack, the Jack of Spades. So there sometimes can be, again, a blindsidedness, only seeing it from one way. Now we know the Jack of Spades is like the actor card, a very creative card, but there can be elements of deception. And usually it's like, because sometimes I feel like with that Jack of Spades, it's like you have to be honest with yourself. Are you seeing yourself honestly? Are you seeing yourself in the way you want to be? Because this is really a shapeshifter card. You can be anybody you want. So again, they do have that ability that I like to say that the Jacks can go from the Waffle House to the White House all in one day. They know how to move to a room, fit to a room, read the room, and fit in. There's a chameleon to this, but essentially on the high side, they're going through initiations that level them up, right? That bring them to a higher levels of health, work, spirituality, love, relationships. But again, the low side of that would be deceit, not being honest, not seeing things clearly, etc. So they're constantly transforming, which would make sense to just being a 5, constantly going through transformation. And then their cosmic moon is the 8 of clubs. And the other card, the other moon card, the 7 of diamonds, is pushing them. So there is some, that teeter-totter of that 7 of the back and forth. But with this 8 of clubs gives them a lot of like emotional power, a lot of emotional strength to be able to overcome any obstacles as well. And when they lean on this 7 of diamonds and have faith that everything and all the change and all the shift and all the transformation is actually leading them to where they're supposed to be, because their transformation card for life is a 6. And 3 of the 4 5s transform into 6s. And what that means is every time something changes, every time something goes the way you didn't think it was going to go, maybe that's exactly the way it was supposed to go. So it teaches you to not resist the change. Don't swim against the current. Go with the flow, because that shift, that change is actually leading you to exactly where you're supposed to be. The 6 of diamonds. Cards of the 6s are fate, karma, alignment, timing, destiny. So trust in the change this week. Trust in the shift. Trust in the upheaval that may be coming, because we have to let go. We have to make space. We have to release to actually have more, and increase. And again, with that six of diamonds, it's like it's bringing things into balance. It's aligning things for you. And again, like you have to have that increase, to have that expansion. We have to let go of things that are no longer serving us. We have to release the things that are weighing us down. The five does not want to be anchored. It is a freedom energy. So to be free, you have to let go. You cannot be held. You cannot be, restricted and chained down and allow. Like I always look at the fives as like if you're on a river, if you got to go with the current. If you try to swim against the current, you're going to exhaust yourself and who knows. So you're going to wear yourself out. So if you just flow with this energy this week, if you just allow the shift that you could wake up and have all these plans and literally in 20 minutes every single one of your plans have completely changed, just roll with it. Ride that wave. Don't resist it. I promise you by the end of the day, you'll be like, that actually worked out even better. But if you in the midst while it's changing, you freak, you panic, you don't let it, you're resisting. And now it's like swimming up against the current. So don't, in this week, because it is a big energy, it can definitely usher in a lot of chaos and a lot of upheaval only if you allow it. Sometimes that's what we need. We need to be pushed. We need to kind of be, moved into a different direction because maybe the path that we're on isn't suited for us anymore. Having faith, that seven of diamonds, pushing them is so big in like trusting and having faith in all the change that this energy can easily bring. But again, a lot of passion in relationships, a lot of like wanting to connect, a lot of lover energy, a lot of intimate energy with a lot of the cards they have. I mean, it is the Venus row, so there is a lot of passion. So really what sets your soul, what kind of gets you going and what gets you shaking, what gets you moving this week. Lean into that with this energy and really enjoy this big five of spades because it can be an upheaval, but it is for the better. It is for the good if you just allow it. So anyways, happy five of spades week. I hope all the changes are leading you to exactly where you want to be. Have faith in it. And as always, I will see you next time for the next week, which will be the six of spades week. So peace, everybody.